Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Sam, or Chaotic, and welcome back to another GTA 5 video here on my channel. Now in today's video, I'm going to be discussing the most recent update in GTA Online, the San Andreas Supersport Series update, which as I'm making this video, was released just over 2 weeks ago, and how this update is being viewed as one of the worst updates that we've ever received in GTA Online, or at least in recent months and years. There have been some very mixed opinions shared around the community in the last 2 weeks or so, with some players very happy and satisfied about some of the content released and coming to GTA Online in this update, whereas some other players are not so happy and very disappointed with the update as a whole. I personally am very in between. There's some content in this update that I very much like and I'm looking forward to, whereas some other stuff which is, yes, a bit disappointing. But I've also got some pretty interesting information to share with you guys as well regarding some of the content in this update. So let's go ahead then and get straight into things. And to start things off, I guess it's worth noting that after a very successful year last year in GTA Online throughout 2017 and the release of 4 major updates in the game, with each update arguably being bigger and better each time, so you can certainly understand why many players are very disappointed with this update, especially after going from the Doomsday Heist update, one of the biggest and best updates we've ever received in GTA Online, to this, a rather small and kind of insignificant update in comparison. And I guess what you also have to bear in mind, the 3 main updates released last year, of course released one after the other, the gun running update, the Smuggler's Run update, and the Doomsday Heist update. But with the release of these, we didn't just see the addition of some new cars into the game, we saw a lot more than that. Loads of new features, loads of new jobs, events, activities, missions, and stuff like that added to free mode. Things which actually improve the game, physically increase the number of things you can do as well, it extends the life of the game and stuff like that. Whereas with this update, all we've seen so far is the addition of a few new vehicles, many of which aren't even available yet, and a few new races which players have very mixed opinions on. With the hot ring races just being a different form of stunt races and nothing particularly special, and the target assault races are really only fun whilst playing with friends, but even then, the payouts on these races are pretty low. In fact, the other day, when these races first came out and I was live streaming, we played a few of these races, and the 2 players that came in first only received an $18,000 payout in first place on a race that lasted over 5 minutes. Now also bear in mind that these races currently have a double money and RP bonus on them, which means either next week or the following, when Rockstar remove the double money and RP bonus from these, the payouts will be even lower. And when that happens, expect very few players to want to play these, like many of the adversary modes which face a very similar issue. But I've got a feeling that the target assault races were in fact supposed to have been released in one of the updates last year. Maybe the gun running update or the Doomsday Heist update, but for whatever reason, most likely the fact that these updates already had a load of content and game modes in them, that it was held back instead and released in this update. An update which was pretty small and, as you can see, clearly in need of more content. And the same goes for the Vapid Caracara that was also released this week. I feel like this vehicle should have been released either in the gun running update, Smuggler's Run, or the Doomsday Heist update, because it is a weaponized vehicle, it is much more fitting for one of those. This update is more focused on regular vehicles, so it's not exactly very fitting. And I do feel like Rockstar may have made this for one of those updates last year, but again, those updates already had plenty of vehicles, certainly very similar to the Caracara, so Rockstar held it back and released it in this update instead. In fact, interestingly enough, in the update files, there were lines of code relating to the Caracara, revealing that some of the upgrades for this vehicle would have been locked, and you had to unlock them if you wanted to fit them, very much like some of the upgrades available for the gun-running vehicles. So possibly some further evidence then that this vehicle was supposed to have been released in one of the updates last year. And it's also a very similar situation with the Sea Sparrow helicopter as well. The only helicopter featured in this update, it's supposed to be a retro or a throwback amphibious helicopter from GTA Vice City and GTA San Andreas. But basically in the game files of this update, there were lines of code which again suggest this was going to have a buy it now price and a trade price, but this helicopter, once released, will only have one price: the buy it now. So again, it suggests this helicopter was initially intended for one of the updates that Rockstar released last year, but for whatever reason, they didn't release it and held it back for this one instead. Again, most likely because the updates last year already had plenty of vehicles to release in them, and this vehicle was simply a leftover one. In fact, this entire update just seems to be a collection of unused and leftover content. Many of the vehicles, for example, in this update aren't particularly special in any way, shape or form, and what we'd consider filler content. Content which Rockstar has made and has only released to bulk up the size of the update. And if you guys recall, last year, there were rumors going around in September, October, and November that Rockstar was working on a hipsters-themed update. And obviously in an update with this theme, we'd expect to see some classic and retro cars and other content like that. But by the looks of things, whatever plans Rockstar had were possibly scrapped, especially seeing the amount of classic and retro themed vehicles we received both in this update and the Doomsday Heist update as well. Just in this update, for example, we've got the Jester Classic, also known as the Supra, the Issy Classic, which is a classic mini, the Vapid Ellie, of course based upon a classic Mustang, the Michelli GT, we've got the Chubaruk, based upon a Lada, the Fagola, and the Sea Sparrow, of course, from GTA Vice City and GTA San Andreas. Now, of course, this could just be a coincidence, but it certainly seems like a lot of classic and retro-themed vehicles for one update, and I believe that Rockstar have redistributed whatever plans and vehicles they had for the hipster-themed update, with many of those vehicles just added to this one instead. And then, of course, for the actual content that we've received in this update. Now sure, although there are some vehicles in this update which are pretty good and vehicles players actually wanted to see in the game, vehicles like the Supra, a new version or a classic version of the Issy, and we've got ourselves a new version of the Dominator as well, many of the vehicles aren't really that good or useful at all. And then of course there's the issue of the performance for many of these vehicles. With this update, Rockstar of course added a brand new game mechanic into the game, which for some reason only affects the new vehicles in this update, which makes them much slower and much worse in the terms of their performance. There are also new handling flags which again ruin their performance and make many, if not all of these vehicles almost useless in comparison to all the other vehicles that we already had in game. Vehicles like the Chevelle Typhoon that was released on day one cost almost $2 million to purchase, but is the second slowest in the supercar category, and it's only just behind the Bullet, which is officially the slowest in the category, which has been in-game ever since day one when the game was first released back in 2013 and only cost $100,000 to buy. And speaking of vehicles released on day one of the update, out of the 16 vehicles this update is adding to GTA Online as a whole, only 5 of those were actually released on day one. Now of course we know Rockstar like to hold content back from updates and release them as drip-fed vehicles over the course of a few weeks and months, but to only release 5 of the 16 vehicles from an update just seems like insult to injury, and really goes to show how Rockstar would prefer to hold back vehicles and release them one by one, almost to milk them rather than just release them all in one go. Now I'm sure there are very mixed opinions on this and whether drip feeding vehicles into GTA Online is a good thing or not. I know some players would prefer to receive all of them in one go, but do bear in mind then we'd have to go maybe 2 or 3 months before Rockstar released any new content into the game. So there are certainly some advantages to Rockstar spacing out content in the game. It means that players can enjoy the vehicles one by one rather than having all the vehicles released at once, with some of the vehicles then being completely ignored. But it is worth noting that Rockstar with this update are mixing things up and trying out a completely different strategy. Rather than releasing the leftover content and the drip feeding vehicles one by one, instead Rockstar are releasing the content in groups. So on the first week of drip feeding, we of course received 2 vehicles, the Pegassi Tesseract and the Vapid Ellie. This week we received the Caracara and the new game mode Target Assault. And then as for the next group of vehicles to release, we'll see 3 vehicles released at the same time on the same day. But do bear in mind, although some players may prefer this, whereas others may not, it means that when Rockstar run out of vehicles and content to release in the game, we'll then have to go a number of weeks, maybe even a number of months, with no content whatsoever being released before the next update. And based upon the current rate of content release and the amount of content left, it means that by the end of this month in April, Rockstar would have run out of vehicles to release. Now although yes, next month Rockstar do have a number of game modes and some new additions to the creator which they've already announced, from what we've seen and heard so far, this is nothing too special to get excited about, and simply just filler content as well. And from what we've heard so far about the next update coming to GTA Online, it may not be released until mid-summer, maybe at some point late June, maybe even early July, which means we will at some point have to go a number of weeks, even a few months before the next update is released, with no content released in between. Which, as of right now, may not seem or feel all that bad because, after all, it was only 2 weeks ago or so that this update was actually released in the game, but come the release of the next update, it will feel like the game has almost completely died. A similar feeling that was felt last year between the release of the last update in 2016, the import and export update, and then the release of the gunrunning update in June 2017. Although yes, between that we saw the release of an update in March, the Cunning Stunts Special Vehicle Circuits update. It was a rather small and insignificant update just like this one, which didn't really add much content into the game at all that was very exciting, so it felt like we'd gone 6 months without really receiving anything at all. Anyway, but with that being said, that's pretty much it then for this video. I've shared and discussed everything that I want to talk about. Of course, I want to get your thoughts and feelings on the most recent update in GTA Online. What are your thoughts, feelings, and opinions on the San Andreas Supersport Series update? Do you guys like it? Do you like the content and the vehicles in it? If so, what is your favorite vehicle released or soon to be released from this update? And if not, of course, let me know. And if you guys agree with me and you feel like this update is a filler update just full of leftover and rejected content, of course drop a like on this video as well. And if you guys haven't subscribed to my channel, then make sure you do, because I upload all the latest and the greatest Grand Theft Auto 5 content. So as always guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.